And listening to that is Britain's Security Minister, Brandon Lewis. Brandon Lewis, he was talking there, Simon Coveney, about a quick agreement on security. Is that something that you too would like to see?
Yes, we want to see a good, ambitious agreement on security. Obviously, that's going to be part of the negotiations, but we think that is an important part, something we want to see. And I would just say Simon's absolutely right. This is a weekend to also celebrate the fantastic work that both he, Julian Smith, and the people across Northern Ireland, across all the parties, have done to get that devolved authority back up and running.
Can I ask you about some of the specific things that will be on your desk right now? One of them is Europol and the European arrest warrant. Now, that's very, very important to our sense of security in this country, the way the police operate. And it's not clear at the moment how we're going to carry on in our involvement in that, because they both involve the European Court of Justice. How are you going to square that circle? And what are you asking for?
Well, I'm sure you'll appreciate, as I've said in various ways before, I'm not going to go into details about our negotiating position, but we do want to continue to be part of Europol. And let's remember there are countries who have agreements with and are actually present in Europol, like the United States, who are not members of the EU. And Europol was around before the institutions of the EU. So this is doable.
But it's now got the European Court sitting above it.
Well, the United States have found a way that works for them to be able to be involved with and have a very large presence. In fact, I think in terms of people, arguably, the largest presence at Europol. So there are ways of doing this. We're an important partner in Europol. A lot of what Europol does is through and driven by us. So I think it's in both parties' interests. And as I say, we're very ambitious for a good holistic agreement across security.
So we'd like to stay part or very closely aligned to Europol and the arrest warrant system. Let me ask you about something else, which is the Schengen Information System, which is the database. And that's really, really important if the police or anybody else is trying to find a missing person, someone's absconded, maybe it's a missing relative or whatever. And I think in the last year, we made more than 500 million applications for information from that system. Will we remain part of it after we leave?
Well, this is, again, Andrew, a very good example of why we want a really ambitious agreement on security, because all of these things play parts in our law enforcement, not just on pure national security, but as you said rightly, with our day-to-day policing work, whether it's the European arrest warrant, whether it's the Schengen Agreement, PNR records, PRUM, all of these things are important. As I say, we're ambitious for an agreement, but we've got to get an agreement that's right, not just for our friends and partners in the EU, but us here in the UK, and respecting the fact that we are leaving the European Union.
Of course, but I mean, it's complicated stuff. If we can't get a single overarching agreement, what do you feel about the prospect of a series of, as it were, smaller agreements that tide us over the end of this year, including security, maybe aviation, fishing, whatever it might be?
Well, I prefer to say focus on what we've agreed in the withdrawal agreement, and the withdrawal agreement does outline both here, the UK government and the European Union are committed to getting that comprehensive agreement across the board. I think we can do it. This is where I slightly disagree with Simon. I think it can be done, not just because both parties in that agreement are committed to doing it, and want to do it. But we're a country that has already got a known pattern of work with the EU, and therefore getting a holistic agreement in the next 12 months, I think, is achievable. And the Prime Minister's got a pretty good record of getting things done.
So the big problem that we've got, of course, and he alluded to it as well, is that the EU is still saying we can do this, we can do it within a year as long as it's a level playing field. And the Prime Minister is saying again and again, no, we must diverge. So that is going to, the more we diverge, the harder these talks are going to be.
Well, any negotiation is obviously going to be difficult and important, and some parts of it are complicated. But let's remember, we are talking about a Prime Minister where people said we couldn't reopen the withdrawal agreement. He did that in under 100 days, got a new agreement, said we couldn't get it through Parliament. We got the general election, got a majority, and just this week we had that vote. We are leaving the European Union. So I think Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, Andrew, has shown that he can get these things done, and I think we will.
A very, very straightforward question, a big question. Do you consider that our security as a country is part of this negotiation?
Well, I think it's making the security agreements, the relationships we have, are something we do need to negotiate. And there is a holistic agreement across our partnership, both in terms of trade and in terms of security. We've got to talk to our partners in the EU to see how we... Well, they're not, trade and security do cross over. Let's be very clear. When you think about customs and tariffs, it's the border force that I'm responsible for that do those checks at the border for HMRC. So there is an interlink, but we do want to make sure we've got a really ambitious programme of action for what we want to achieve on security, because it is in all our interests. Security now doesn't just apply here in the UK, and it doesn't just apply in the EU. We've just seen recently with some fantastic work that the National Crime Agency have done on paedophilia that actually goes across to Korea and all around the world. This is a global challenge. The more we work together, the better.
Well,